everyone, and welcome to the Ticker.com's news channel on YouTube. On this channel, we review stock markets and discuss financial news, market trends, and economic data from Wall Street to Global Street. So let's dive in. We will begin our review of global economy with key releases in the US, Europe, and Japan. Investors remain focused on the latest inflation data in the European Union and ongoing economic growth challenges in Germany. The U.S. durable goods sales in October fell from the previous month, and existing home sales dropped to the lowest level in 13 years as homes availability remained constrained. Market indices were little changed and lacked direction after the release of minutes of the Fed's rate-setting meeting ending on November 1st. Investors looking for the clues for the Federal Reserve to lower rates were disappointed, as most participants supported the continuation of restrictive policy and said that the current stance on monetary policy was restrictive and was putting downward pressure on economic activity and inflation. Most committee members preferred to continue the current restrictive policy until more evidence emerged that inflation is on a sustainable path to 2% level. U.S. existing home sales in October declined 4.1% from the previous month to a seasonably adjusted annualized rate of 3.79 million units, the National Association of Realtors reported Tuesday. The sales dropped to the lowest level since August 2010 and dropped 14.6% from 4.4 million a year ago. The lack of homes available for sales and record-high mortgage rates in nearly 2 decades continue to weigh on the market. The median existing home price for all housing types in October was $391,800, an increase of 3.4% from $378,800 a year ago, and all 4 regions registered price increases. Vehicle sales in the European Union continue to expand as buyers return to purchase electric vehicles and producers faced a few supply chain issues, the European Automobiles Manufacturers Association reported today. New vehicle sales rose for the 15th month in a row. Passenger vehicle sales in October jumped 14.6% from a year ago to 855,000 units, and the market share of fully electric vehicles increased to 14.2% from 12% in the previous month. Crude oil prices drifted lower for the 5th week in a row after Saudi Arabia struggled to build consensus for production quota among oil-producing nations in the OPEC Plus and postponed the meeting by a few days. The yield on the 10-year U.S. Treasury bounced around a 2-month low after the November meeting minutes confirmed the Fed's restrictive monetary policy stance preference. Gold jumped above the $2,000 mark after investors dialed back hopes of rate cuts and adjusted to higher rates staying for longer well into 2024. Crude oil declined 1.3% and fell for the 5th week in a row after the OPEC Plus meeting was postponed as Saudi Arabia struggled to build production quota consensus. Natural gas prices in Europe fell 0.5% to €44 per megawatt hour and fell for the 6th week in a row because of full storage, strong LNG supplies, and despite the forecast of very cold weather across Europe this week. The euro hovered at $1.09, the level last seen in mid-September, after European officials notched up rhetoric of the need for higher rates, citing inflation as still too high. The yen hovered at 150 level after consumer price inflation accelerated to 3.3% in October from 3% in September, the highest level since July. The S&P 500 index and the Nasdaq Composite extended gains for the 4th week in a row after Treasury yields hovered near 2-month lows. European markets extended gains for the 3rd consecutive week in the hopes that the European Central Bank is done raising rates this year. Market indices in Tokyo gained 1%, and the benchmark Nikkei 225 index marched towards a 33-year high as investors assumed that the Bank of Japan would continue its ultra-loose monetary policy despite the rise in inflation. Chinese markets struggle with the ongoing property market weakness and steady outflow of foreign investments. We now review the latest earnings release, and several retailers and tech companies dominated the headlines. Lowe's companies dropped 5% after the home improvement retailer lowered its full-year sales and earnings outlook. Zoom Video Communication declined after the company released quarterly results and estimated weaker than expected revenue growth in the current quarter. Best Buy company declined 5% after the retailer lowered its annual and quarterly sales outlook and offered a cautious holiday sales outlook. Abercrombie & Fitch declined 5% after the retailer reported quarterly results and comparable sales rose 16% from a year ago. Nvidia Corporation edged lower after the company reported quarterly sales tripled and earnings jumped 12-fold following a surge in demand for large language natural processing. Burlington stores soared 20% after the discount retailer reported strong quarterly results and comparable store sales rose 6% from a year ago. Dick's Sporting Goods increased 2% after the specialty retailer reported comparable sales rose 1.7% on top of 6.5% increase in the quarter a year ago. Fresenius Medical Care increased after the dialysis service provider lifted its annual outlook and the company said it settled its billing dispute with the U.S. Department of Defense with positive outcome. HP Inc. decreased after the personal computing and equipment company reported a decline in revenue but swung to a profit from a loss a year ago. Luxury stocks in Paris, France, were under pressure after one of the largest wealth managers in China said it was deeply insolvent because of loans to property developers. Jet2 plc, the UK-based travel and holiday company, reported higher sales and earnings in its interim results, but confirmed sales in the current quarter are running slightly lower than a year ago. Looking ahead next week, investors are awaiting earnings from Dell, Synopsys, VMware, Intuit, Salesforce, and CrowdStrike. On the economic front, in the U.S., traders are looking ahead to review the third quarter GDP estimate, international trade data, and personal income and outlay report. In the European Union, economists are awaiting the release of inflation and jobs data from the euro area, Germany, France, and Italy. You can read daily U.S. and global financial market news, earnings calendar, stock movers, and economic updates on ticker.com and 123jump.com. You can also get the latest financial books on radar.com and keep up with financial industry events on eventsinamerica.com. That is all for today, and we will see you next week.